Hey, Housers. It is Michael Braithwaite, your host of the On the Way Home podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed today's guest. As always, I learned so much today, and it was such a cool idea. We're going to get to introducing him. But first, I should tell you, I hail from a great organization called Blue Door. Blue Door's organization that works just north of Toronto in York region, Durham region, and Peel region. We support our most vulnerable with housing supports, both emergency, transitional, and longer term. And plus, we do some work in the social enterprise construction space with our construct program right across the top in Durham, Peel, and York region. And we help our clients, our most vulnerable people who sometimes have barriers to getting health supports. We help them get different health supports through our programs. So full service at Blue Door. If you want to check us out, see bluedoor.ca. We do this podcast in partnership with Tim Richter and his wonderful team at the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness. They have a huge conference coming up. I hope you're there. By the time this podcast airs, it might be on, it might be over, but they do this conference every year. It's the best of the best in this sector. Check it out. And they do so much more. They do training and advocacy. Go to caeh.ca to see all the wonderful things I am doing a very poor job of selling, because it is an incredible national organization that has really moved the needle on ending homelessness across Canada. And let's get to today's guest. Today I have with me Gil Yaron, and Gil's from an organization called Lighthouse. I'm going to read this because it's pretty cool. He is managing director at Lighthouse of Circular Innovation, and it's an organization that's based in Vancouver that's working on advancing regenerative and circular practices in the built environment. What does that mean? I didn't know until Gil explained it to me. It's a very simple concept, right? Gil was telling me that there's thousands of homes across the country and where he is in the lower mainland in Vancouver that are torn down. And so we're throwing all these materials into a landfill, and we're losing all this housing where that housing can be relocated. And if you don't want to relocate the housing, you can actually deconstruct that home and use the materials in another home. Gil was telling me that 20 to 30% of landfills are made up of construction materials. So, you know, not only are we taking down housing that we desperately need, we're filling up landfills, right? And we're crushing our environment. And then you talked about the climate piece as well, how that affects the climate, where we're taking down new trees to build instead of reusing old materials. This is a win-win-win. It helps developers, it helps our housing crisis, it helps our environment. It's such a cool process. Gil did a report called Blueprint for Change. We talk about that report and the recommendations, the policy recommendations coming out of this that he's encouraging us to push forward in every province. He talks about some of his work with First Nations, how they're able to pick up these houses, retrofit them, and transport them there. It's cheaper, it's quicker. Than building from scratch, and you're reusing materials, which is so cool for the environment. He talks about some of the surprises along the way and his hopes for the future. This is an incredible podcast, so interesting, a new spin. Just when I think I might know a bit about housing, in comes someone named Gil to re-educate me. Thank you so much, Gil, for doing that. I hope you enjoy this podcast as much as I did. Let's go to that now. Welcome to On the Way Home.
Thanks.
We
Nice
start.
to be here, Michael.
It's good. We start the podcast with the same question for each guest that comes on. It's very personal to each guest. So we never really get the same answer, and that is, what does home mean to you?
Yeah, I think home means a bunch of things. It means safety and security. It means a sense of place and community. Um, yeah, I think those are the things that really resonate for me when I think about home.
Very cool. Now, I don't know what grade it was for you, Gil, but back, in the early days when you had career day at school, and people's parents might have come in to talk about different things and careers. Usually, the field that you're in today was not one of those that as in grade 2, they're like, yes, this is where I'm going to go. You got to fall into it somehow. We're always interested in the journey of our guests. So if you could tell us a little bit about yours, that would be amazing.
Yeah, that's for sure. I often sit and wonder how I ended up here. I actually started as a professional musical theater performer. Uh, that lasted for a while. And then I should say that everything I've done has always been kind of driven by passion for social justice and the environment. I was in, I used theater as a medium to talk about those issues. And then I decided I'd be better off in another field. So I went into law, and I became a lawyer, and I practiced environmental law, and um, then I did that for a number of years, and then I had my own business, and I came to work for Lighthouse. And started getting involved in green building, and also in kind of the social issues around housing and the built environment, and how the built environment relates to community building. So, and that's kind of where I found myself here. So it's been a long and circuitous journey, but really glad to be doing this work now.
That is so cool, from musical theater to law to the work you're doing now. And I think it all kind of adds different elements to it for sure. You mentioned where you are now, Lighthouse. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so Lighthouse has been around since 2006. We're a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to advance the ideas of regenerative and circular practices in the built environment. And really, what that means is creating buildings and homes, our built environment that is net positive. It actually gives back to the community, whether you're thinking about energy or uh, purification of water, or in terms of livability, health and wellness, those types of things. That's all what we talk about when we talk about regenerative building. And then on the circular side, how do we manage homes more responsibly, and our built environment more responsibly, so that we're not just taking resources, building homes, and then destroying them and throwing them into landfill, but rather looking at them holistically, where the materials that are used are more environmentally friendly, and that when homes reach their end of life, that we take those materials and we recirculate them back into the economy and reuse them, rather than um, generating waste from them. So those are, and these things, these principles um, have recently intersected with a lot of social objectives around housing, providing affordable and healthy housing for communities. And so I'm very excited about that intersection that's starting to evolve.
I often think when we talk about affordable housing, sometimes we stop and we say, okay, affordable is what people are paying in rent. But if we do buildings right, sometimes we can make them truly affordable so they're energy efficient, and they do many other things, as you said, contribute back to the community. What has the response been so far to Lighthouse and some of the work that you've done? Are people embracing this? Is there pushback or?
Bit of both. There's been wide acceptance, and I think we're seeing a lot more, especially with concerns around climate. I mean, our built environment has the biggest impact in terms of carbon emissions of any sector in our economy. And so, how we build our homes is not only going to impact our immediate well-being, but it's also impacting the long-term health of our planet. In addition, so we're definitely seeing a lot of energy and attention in that respect. And as well, in terms of livability, and this is like the project that we're working on currently that really excites me, is that we want to build affordable homes that are good quality homes, and that enhance the lives of their inhabitants, and the community, the livability within the community. So again, there's a lot of interest around that now with the focus on affordable housing. People are looking for innovative ways to build better, and obviously more affordably at the same time.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that. We're right now trying to take where I'm from, Blue Door. We're trying to take down this little house that was donated 20 plus years ago because it's on a big piece of land and build more housing. And we feel, it's really irresponsible of us to be sitting on this land in a housing crisis and with what our mission is. So we've looked at all different ways. One of the things we looked at was 3D printing a two-story building. And uh, a couple of the reasons were, hey, this is going to last forever, a lot longer, and often we don't think about that. I think sometimes there's such a rush in a sense, or it's around affordability, or what can we do, that we don't think of what happens down the line when there's major capital repairs or
Mm.
that type of thing. And that's been a piece for us. Plus, because it's concrete, it might save the heating and cooling costs, right? Like because of the walls. And I tell you that because I think for groups like Blue Door, often we want to do the right thing. We want to build environmentally friendly. We want to build net zero buildings. We want to, but there's some upfront costs, and I think the challenge always is raising those dollars. Can you help me wrap my head around for groups like us who want to do that kind of work and really would love to? Um, do you find that to be an obstacle sometimes?
Oh, definitely. And I mean, I think, talking about the competing interests and demands, and the choices that, the trade-offs that have to be made when you're looking at trying to find these affordable solutions, is really challenging. I think one of the exciting things about the model that we've developed, a particular model around providing affordable housing, is that we're trying to leverage a number of different tools that I've not seen come together previously. Um, Various tax, not, obviously grants, government grants. That's kind of the traditional approach to funding these initiatives, but also using available tax credits that certain constituencies, particularly First Nations, municipalities, and nonprofit housing associations, can use because of their status, their tax status. And so being able to give a tax credit back to a developer or to a supplier of materials is a real advantage, because obviously that offsets some of the costs as well. So we're leveraging a bunch of different financing and tax incentives to support the development.
Very cool. Now we
Probably
know
easier to talk about when I get into the actual example of what we're doing, but in the abstract, that's where we're.
very cool. Yeah, and let's talk about that a bit. We know we need to change. I think you have a blueprint for change. At least that is what your report is called, Blueprint for Change. Can you talk to us a little bit about this report? How did it all come about?
Yeah. So one of the great things that about Lighthouse is that we're kind of we're agnostic. We're in a space where we're just trying to help industry and help government move in a more sustainable way to provide environmentally friendly and affordable housing. And we get developers coming to us to help problem solve and troubleshoot. And so this project, a blueprint for change, actually came about from a local company that wanted to use home relocation as a way to take existing homes that were slated for demolition and repurpose them, retrofit them, and provide them as new housing. And so initially, that's where it started. And we got funding through Van City Credit Union here in British Columbia to basically do a report that laid out this blueprint. Basically, the blueprint is a policy that would prioritize home relocation. When a home is slated for demolition, it would require that the developer or the homeowner consider home relocation, and as a first option, if they can't relocate the home, then deconstruct it, and then as a last option, demolish it. Because these homes are valuable resources, and currently we're just um, uh, blowing them down and throwing them into landfill. So instead of turning it into a liability for the developer, instead of it being a liability for the developer who wants to redevelop this parcel of land, turn it into an asset that can also be that can benefit the developer, but it can also provide housing to other communities. And so that's really the genesis of the idea, and it's kind of exploded since then, and turned into a really cool project to provide affordable housing for First Nations and other communities as well.
Very cool. I mean, it's a true win-win, right? Your developers are winning, communities are winning. In this case, Indigenous community. What you're speaking of, so that's great. Like, how help me understand too, wrap my head around when you say how many of these buildings, like how big of a solve would this be if you were to do this across the country? Even?
Yeah, so in Vancouver alone, or the lower mainland here, we have about 2,700 homes being demolished every year to make way for redevelopment. A lot of these homes are high quality homes. Some of them have been built within the last 10 years. Really, if I showed you some pictures, they're just truly gorgeous homes with beautiful interior finishings, and well built homes. So we estimate that about 20 to 40 of those homes, 20 to 40% of those homes. So we're talking, probably around realistically 600 to 800 homes each year would be eligible to be relocated. An additional 40 to 60% of those homes would be candidates for deconstruction. So if we can't actually save the home, we can at least save the materials in the home and repurpose them in new construction or in other uses. So that's really, the magnitude of the opportunity is huge. Literally hundreds of homes could be relocated as affordable housing.
And if you're saying reconstruct, like if you're saving the materials, you're saving the environment and saving a lot of money, right, on the other end. If you've got those materials that you don't have to repurchase and go about gathering again, right?
Absolutely. And, in a lot of these communities, building new is extremely expensive, way more expensive than in urban areas, because you have to bring the labor and the materials up to wherever they are. Like, we're dealing with some First Nations in very remote areas of British Columbia. And so providing a home that is fully built, basically they just have to build the foundation and then set the home down and connect it up. That saves the nation or the community in question huge dollars. We estimate that we can save about 70 to 80% of the total cost of a new build.
It's incredible. Gil, I'll tell you once I was with when I was with Raising the Roof, a little national organization, we had been offered a home. Canadian Tire had this big where their corporate center was. They had inherited this heritage home that they wanted gone from their property. It was beautiful, and they said if you could move it, you can have it, right? So we had two challenges. We had to find land to do so, but to actually move it, and this is a heritage home, mind you, probably a little more complicated than your average home. But I remember at the time, the cost to actually, lift this home and move it somewhere else, it was almost, like by the time we got it set back up, it was like we might be better to build new.
Mm.
But this was a heritage home. But I thought to my mind, what a beautiful heritage home that's going to waste because no one was living in it where it was, and what an opportunity. Um,
Yeah.
are there cost savings? Like, is it it's still, and that was a while back. So are there ways to do this that are a little more cost effective?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a really cool and creative thing that we've come about in developing this model. So the way it works basically is that the developer has certain costs associated with demolishing the property. So they have to pay for abatement and then the demolition and the landfilling costs. That can be anywhere between $20,000 and $40,000 out here on the West Coast. It could vary in other parts of the country, but so there's those costs to the developer, and then so what we do is the developer gifts the home to a nation or to a nonprofit housing association. Because of the tax status of the nation, they can then issue a charitable tax receipt for the fair market value of the home. So the developer now sees value in that property that they are gifting. They receive that value, and we ask the developer to then contribute the funds that they would have otherwise spent to remove that property, that $20,000 to $40,000, back to the nation to help offset some of the costs in moving and retrofitting the home. The other thing we do, we're building into this model, is that we're creating a repurposing facility in the Lower Mainland so that the home gets retrofitted here before it's shipped to its end destination. In that way, we can reduce the labor and the material costs because we have those here at the ready, and we don't have to transport them all the way up to the end destination. And then finally, we supplement all of that with we're working with a number of federal and provincial agencies to align grants for energy efficiency retrofits and other types of and the other grants that exist now to preserve existing housing, and all of that in totality is what helps to make this so affordable. Again, like I said, about 70 to 80% of the cost of a full new build.
That is incredible. And Gil, my apologies. I took you were telling me about your report, then I had so many questions. I took us away from that because I think it's really, really exciting. I love what you're doing. Let's talk about the key recommendations coming out of this report. What can you tell me?
Yeah. So again, it circles back to the initial principle that I mentioned, and we call it a triage approach. Basically, what we're in the report, what we're arguing for is that we want to preserve homes, the existing homes. Why, when we have a housing crisis, are we tearing down homes, pre-existing homes? Why aren't we extending the life of these homes and making good use of them? So the primary recommendation coming out of the report is that we want communities, municipalities, and provinces, frankly, to implement a triage approach where every home that is slated for removal has to go through an assessment. And in that assessment, it's determined whether the home is a candidate to be relocated. And if it can't be relocated, can it be deconstructed? And if it can't be deconstructed, as a last resort, we demolish it. So we're flipping the whole approach on its head. Rather than demolition being the first approach, it becomes the last approach. And we try as best as we can to preserve that home. And in addition to that, so there's a bunch of supporting recommendations around decoupling deconstruction permits from building permits so that developers have given more time to allow for deconstruction or home relocation, because currently, if in communities where those two permits are coupled together, once the building permit is issued, the developer wants that property gone as fast as possible so that they can begin building. And so it makes it more challenging to get the developer to do the right thing in that moment. And even if it doesn't technically take more time, the traditional mindset is blow that house down and get it out, and so we want to, again, incentivize giving the developer more time to breathe and allow them to work through this process with us.
Very cool. Now, anytime you do a report, you think, this is what our hopes are. This is coming into it. We think we're going to prove this. Any surprises as you did this work?
Yep. I think, well, there's a number of issues. One is it's surprising how, on one hand, there's a lot of interest, but on the other hand, it's there's still quite a bit of intransigence. It's surprising how many barriers and roadblocks people will put in the way to embracing this kind of approach. Um, just for time is one example. People, the industry thinks it takes a lot longer. There's this um, a belief, or based on past experience, this idea that it takes much longer to deconstruct a home than it does to, or relocate it, than it takes to demolish it. And what we're seeing actually is a lot of advancements in technology and processes that are now making it possible to deconstruct a home in 3 days. Similarly, relocating a home doesn't take, as long as the planning is there in place in advance, and there's enough notice to get things lined up, the actual relocation takes far less time than either deconstruction or demolition, frankly. So there's that. Coming up against that was a bit of a surprise to us, that people were throwing a lot of barriers in the way that really are not there anymore.
Very cool. What about hopes? You do this report. Anyone that does a report never wants it to sit on the shelf and say, well, job done. You want something to happen. So what are your hopes for the report moving forward?
Well, our hopes have already been exceeded, because really what happened is that through the CMHC Housing Supply Challenge, we're one of the 26 finalists in the challenge. And we are now able to take the recommendations from that report, and we've built this program to relocate homes. So we're actually building this out, and we've partnered with a number of First Nations in British Columbia already, who are very keen to receive homes. And we're literally working this through, all the financing, all the logistics of moving the homes and retrofitting them to meet the needs of those communities. It's all playing out. So we're seeing the blueprint come to life right now, and that's really, really exciting. So once we have some of these homes moving through the process, we hope that we can demonstrate, or that it will demonstrate to local governments, that putting policy in place for this is really just going to help facilitate that and move it forward, and make sure that the supply is available. Because with this triage approach, it will naturally push these homes into the relocation stream or the deconstruction stream, as opposed to being demolished.
Well, listen, Gil, I think it's incredible. We're talking about, any idea about from the environmental piece, when you're deconstructing and people aren't just throwing that out, the type of impact it makes on the environment, that our listeners can wrap their heads around? Like, what every house that you save, in a sense, or relocate or deconstruct or reuse, what does that do for the environment?
Yeah. Well, the impacts are huge. I mean, about 25 to 33% of our landfills, so a quarter to a third of our landfills, are comprised of construction and demolition waste.
Wow.
So the impact on the environment, and the impact in terms of costs to municipalities in terms of managing landfill, and to taxpayers, is huge. In terms of carbon and climate, the average 2,000 square foot home contains, anywhere between 20 and 50 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. And basically, when you look at the carbon associated with a home, all the materials in a home, when you destroy that home and throw it into landfill, all of that embodied carbon is lost. All the energy that was used to make that home is lost forever. We're also throwing away, a lot of the homes that are getting demolished right now are 1950s, 1940s homes. On the West Coast, these were made with old growth timber, wood that we will never ever see again. And we are literally shredding it and throwing it into landfill. So we're losing all these resources, these valuable resources, and we're ending up cutting down virgin trees to build homes. And the wood that we're using now is far not as good quality as we're never going to get wood as good as the old growth wood that we used uh, early on. So that's on so many levels, we're the environmental impact, and the climate impact to climate is significant.
That is just so amazing when you say 20 to 30% of a landfill. I mean, just that's huge, right? Now, you're doing incredible work. If people want to see the report, they want to find out more about Lighthouse and the work that you're doing, where can they go?
Yeah, so the report is available to download for free from our website, light-house.org. So two words, light-house.org. Yeah, it's there along with a number of other reports that we've issued that look at the intersection between housing and the environment, and sustainability. So we welcome people to access it there and share it with your community, share it with your municipal government, get the word out about this approach.
Well, so it's relocating and deconstructing. Is that
Relocation and deconstruction? Yeah.
relocation, deconstruction? Amazing. I mean, I have learned so much today. This is so cool. And I think every time someone's like, well, I don't know, is like the housing crisis, what else can we do? This is what we could do. This is incredible. Multiple wins for everyone in a housing crisis. I think it's fabulous. And I so appreciate you sharing with our community. You might know this podcast goes across Canada, of course, but we
Mhm.
have Australian viewers and people from the UK. And this is something that happens all around the world. We are more alike than we are different. So I think we're sharing solutions. This is a solution. Gil, thank you so much for coming on and sharing and for the work you do.
Thanks, Michael, for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Well, Gil, thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you next time on the way
Great.
home.
Take care.